I'm not sure that it's important for everyone to expand their consciousness. I would like to say that everyone should expand their consciousness, but clearly there's lots and lots of people who aren't interested in expanding their consciousness. But what I find is that anyone who does gets a great benefit from it. What happens is that in society and school, from our families, we're taught this basic formula for happiness, right? It's basically, if we have these four things together, if we have enough money and enough stuff, material wealth, we have success of some kind, whether it's in a career or it's in some other field, but that we're successful. If we have loved ones in our life, so you could say love, family, if that's there. And if it's a really holistic system, then it'll also teach us that health is important for happiness. So if we have our material world together, we're successful, we have love in our life, and we're healthy, then that means that we're happy. But what you see again and again is you see people who have all of these things, and yet they wouldn't consider themselves happy. They're not happy. Happiness is a fifth element. It's a fifth area of focus that people need to have. Because similarly, you'll see people who have that fifth element, they have the happiness element there. But maybe they're missing some of the other ones. Maybe they don't have money. Maybe their health is not good. Maybe they're all alone. They don't have love. That sort of thing. So expanding one's consciousness is kind of a fancy way for talking about focusing on your happiness. What happens is that we're born, and I believe that we all come from spirit, that our essence is the spirit that then takes birth as this kid. And then that kid lands in a family that's more or less conscious. It lands in a home that recognizes their spirit more or less, that treats them with more or less love, that honors their nature more or less. They're in a society that, again, more or less is going to nurture their spirit. And as they grow up in that family, in that society, they start getting shaped in these different ways. Their consciousness, their individual mind and emotions and heart starts to get imprinted with all of these different experiences. So then, by the time they get to be adults, very often they've completely forgotten about their spirit. Very often they've become so accustomed to playing the role that they've been programmed to do that they don't really have a relationship with their spirit anymore, or relationship with even a cosmic spirit, even if they're religious. Many people might be religious and they have a concept of a higher power, or they even go to church and have an active prayer life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have a direct experience of God, a direct experience of the sacred. So expanding one's consciousness is really a matter of expanding one's relationship with consciousness. Consciousness is already expanded. You can't expand consciousness any more than it already is. Consciousness is the most expanded thing, the most expanded stuff. What gets contracted isn't so much our consciousness. What gets contracted is our experience of consciousness. What gets contracted is our experience of ourselves. It gets limited into thinking I'm just this guy that was born in Peoria, that has such and such attributes and these gifts and these deficits, like that. So what happens is If that guy happens to, in some way or another, come across an experience of expanded consciousness, or meet someone whose consciousness is expanded, then all of a sudden there's a window into something more. There's a window into all of this other dimension of being. And we start to realize, well, this guy from Peoria, this is just the tip of an iceberg. Yeah, I am this guy from Peoria. Yeah, I do have these attributes on the outside, on the level of this material existence. But when I'm able to turn away from that, when I'm able to look deeper within this guy from Peoria, I experience this whole other realm, this whole other level of empowerment and expansion. To the degree that I can then bring that expansion into the guy from Peoria, to the degree that I can bring that experience of expansion into my daily life, into my relationships, into my work, then life takes on a completely different flavor. Then there's so many possibilities that open. Then I'm able to love very freely. Then I'm able to serve this universe, serve this moment, whatever it may be, in the way that I want to. When we don't have that relationship with consciousness, we live in a very knee-jerk way. We simply react to whatever comes at us, much the way that someone would if they were sleepwalking and they just bump into a wall and then they just turn and they keep walking in some way where there isn't a wall. As our consciousness expands, as we open up our experience of consciousness, there's an awakening that happens. And then we're moving through this universe in the way that we believe, in this way that we know. We have a kind of a sensitivity to the present moment that really brings tremendous happiness. I never imagined that I would be as happy as I am. The way that I was raised, the people that I was raised with, the circumstances that I came from, you could say were all setting me up for a very superficial, very unhappy life. By just the grace of God, that's the only thing I can attribute it to. I met different teachers and masters and was initiated into this path where I learned about my own consciousness, and now I'm the happiest person that I know, I think. And so then the people that I come in contact with, whether the people that I come in contact with as my students, or they're just people that I come in contact with on the street or in my life, that's what I bring to that relationship. I mirror then to them their greatness, their expansion, rather than their iceberg tip. You know, because if all I know about myself is the tip, just this role of just being this limited guy, then that's the only way that I can relate to you. When I know my greatness, when I know the depth of my soul, then I can't help but to relate to the depth of your soul. And I like to think that that calls that forth in the world around us.